of my experience in former Yugoslavia, in Kosovo, I think it was just amazing what Martin Luther King was able to do with just peacefully.
Yeah,
I real like I was always impressed with the "I Have a Dream" speech. Every American, you're a complete racist if you're not moved by the "I Have a Dream" speech, as far as I'm
absolutely.
concerned. But I was moved by that speech, but I didn't really understand how important he was. That he accomplished what he accomplished with the civil rights movement peacefully, because
Yes.
it could easily have gone the route of Yugoslavia. It easily could still be a mess. And yeah, look, racial relations aren't perfect in the U.S. now, but
I
I
think he
came out
said
with
it.
a
I think he said it best when he said, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." All right. Today I have with me Mike Mahoney. You're a former NYPD detective, and you just recently wrote a book. And what is the title of your book again?
the title of the book is "The Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo."
Okay. And so the title of the book makes me think because I haven't read the book, and I we didn't really have enough time to so I could buy the book and get it here before the interview. But tell me a little bit
That's
about
fine.
the title of the book is Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo. Now, is this a true story or is this fiction?
The book is fiction, but it's based on true events. I did go on a 1 year mission in Kosovo with the police. Almost all of the crimes depicted in it actually happened. Probably where I needed to take license to make the story a suspense thriller, I needed to have all the crimes committed by one person and make that person the villain. So the crimes depicted in the book, they happened while I was there, and I responded to a couple of them. Uh, we did make an arrest in one of the cases. We did make arrests in the other, but for the book's sake, we had one person responsible for those crimes, and the protagonist in my book, let's say, not necessarily leading the investigation, but helped move the investigation to catch and this one particular criminal and get them up on war crimes charges. But I'm just going to stick with fiction, but a lot of true stories in there, and particularly some of the crazier stuff, which sounds made up, is actually true, and some of the more mundane stuff is kind of made up just to move the story along. Let's say.
Yeah, so to people like me who read a lot, I actually know like there's probably reasons why you can't put the true stories in there, for um privacy reasons and security reasons. As readers, we generally understand, that's there's some true stories in there. It's kind of like a movie that's based on true events or something like that, where you got you got the movie itself, but they have to dramatize the events to get to keep people's attention and stuff. Is that sort of like what the book's like?
Exactly. That's
That
exactly it. The title of the book is interesting because um, initially this was something that I said over drinks in Kosovo that one of my colleagues picked up on. And I don't, quite frankly, I vaguely remember even saying it, but we were talking about our colleagues, like what kind of person goes on a police mission. So there were several hundred Americans in Kosovo, and we were there as active police officers with executive authority. We weren't police advisors like in Kosovo. I'm sorry, like in Bosnia. In Bosnia, we were there as a UN contingent from all over the world, 60 countries. America had a big contingent, but they were unarmed and they didn't make arrests. In Kosovo, the police force left at the end of that conflict. They moved up north of the administrative line and they had no police force. So we were there with gun belts on, executive authority to make arrests. And my colleagues, a lot of them, but we were mainly talking about the Americans, great guys. I had a great time with them, but there were all kinds of crazy, a lot of them on third and fourth marriages. And I had never been married before. and I'm with guys like the third marriage didn't work out. So they needed the money. A lot of them really needed the money. And it was a lot of money back then. It was $100,000 tax free. And I was in New York City making about 30,000 at the time, 35,000. And I was a high paid police officer. There were some cops from Texas, they were making like 12, $14 an hour,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
that's like 100 grand is a lot of money now.
tax free. It's tax free. So it was just something I was saying, like, my God, the Americans over here, we're like, it's like the land of broken toys. I was kind of referring to my colleagues, not really the whole situation in Kosovo, but I thought it was appropriate at the end when I was thinking of titles, making it more broad to include like everything going on over there. It was a really kind of a tough time in the history of this region, and it was a very interesting time. And it's actually one of the reasons I wrote the book. I just there's no books. Nobody knows. I shouldn't say nobody knows. People know that American police officers served in UN missions in Haiti. We served in East Timor, Bosnia, Kosovo, but there's really not much written about it, or there's no movies about it. So I wanted to give people just a taste of what it's like to arrive there shortly after a conflict.
So you were involved in the police action over in Kosovo, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that and how you became involved in that. As so you were in the NYPD and then you went
Yeah.
to Kosovo. So tell me a little bit about what that was like. First of all, what it was like in the NYPD before you left, and then what it was like and how you ended up in the move or how you ended up to come into Kosovo and why.
Well, my father, my brother, my uncle were all police officers. I have cousins, all NYPD. My father's from the Bronx. My mother's from Manhattan. I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up on Long Island. But I went on the NYPD, and I have to say, when I joined, I wasn't really super gung ho, but I ended up really loving it. From the academy on, I ended up really loving it. As a matter of fact, I had some interesting investigative experience when I went to the warrant division. This is a long time ago. I'm an old timer. So this is when Rudy Giuliani was in office. They had this broken windows. I don't know if you ever heard of the broken windows
Yeah.
initiative, where they went after low level crimes and criminals to get to bigger criminals and bigger crimes. And I went to the warrant division for transit. And so the transit police, when somebody would jump a turnstile under the broken windows philosophy, they would write them a ticket or a summons, but they would bring them in the office. And a lot of times warrants would come back on them. And you'd be surprised how people who are wanted would still jump a turnstile. Like if I'm wanted, I probably wouldn't do something stupid like that, but they do, and they get arrested. And they were making arrests from this. And one of the things that they went even further. They said those people who jumped the turnstile and got a ticket, if they don't show up for court, we're going to go out and get you. We're going to come and do a warrant on you. So I was part of that warrant squad. I'm there at work at 4 a.m. That's when you start. You try and get people while they're asleep, or a lot of the people are awake when we arrive. There are people who stay up all night and party and do whatever. But
The city that never sleeps.
Yeah, the city that never sleeps. But this work was so incredibly dangerous because they didn't know why we were there. So when I got in the morning at 4 a.m, they say, "All right, we're going to go after this person," and they read. A lot of them have rap sheets, so they read down their rap sheet, and we're going to go in as a team and bang on their door at 4 a.m. and say, "Police," but we're only there to bring them to court for jumping a turnstile. That's why we're there. We're not there for whatever else they did, but they don't know that. And
Right.
so we have these career criminals. Boom, 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 police. We had a guy jump out of the second floor window, hit the ground running, take it over. We run, we tackle him, and we tell him, "You didn't show up for court for this." He's like, "What? Are you
All this for a
kidding me?"
bench warrant?
What did you do? it was really like a funny, interesting kind of niche job to have at the NYPD. But I taught in the academy. I was out on patrol in different parts, mainly in Manhattan. But I didn't have any disdain for the job. I wanted adventure. I wanted to go overseas and see what that's all about. The Mission to Kosovo advertisement really kind of interests me. I thought this would be really cool if I could go over there for a year, and so I just jumped on, the opportunity to go overseas and do this kind of work.
That's awesome, man. So what was the police action in Kosovo for the listeners that aren't familiar with it? And as a matter of fact, I have a very basic knowledge of it myself. What happened?
Oh, so Yugoslavia broke up in the early 90s. As a matter of fact, just recently, Netflix put out a show about the Yugoslavian basketball team that they went to the European Championship as Yugoslavia. And meanwhile, war was breaking out and their countries were breaking apart. So Yugoslavia was made up of Serbia, Montenegro, Slovenia, Croatia, Macedonia. I hope I didn't leave one out. But they broke apart essentially in the early 90s, and everybody, I shouldn't say everybody's familiar with Bosnia, but most Americans would be more familiar with Bosnia. There was a lot of heavy fighting. There was some war crimes, heavy war crimes, some real terrible stuff that went on. And the siege on Sarajevo was on the news. So maybe you're probably your younger listeners aren't familiar with this time period. This is in the early 90s when Yugoslavia broke up. But later on, Kosovo wasn't one of the nation states of Yugoslavia. It's a province of Serbia, but it's 90% ethnic Albanian. And they've been working very hard for their independence, and they had some kind of semi-independent status even under Serbia. But that conflict came in the late 90s, probably around 98 was when NATO bombed Kosovo and Serbia in support of the province, of the breakaway province of Kosovo. This was all done under Slobodan Milosevic. He was the head of Serbia. I think it was the prime minister or the president, but Milosevic was a pretty tough guy, and probably the biggest thing with the conflict, the Serbs are made out to be the ultimate villains. I mean, they're like, Voldemort, Darth Vader, all wrapped up into one. And in some respects, Milosevic was a really bad guy and made some really bad decisions. But I think the biggest mistake for Serbia was that they let the paramilitaries loose, and they were very lawless, and they're the ones who really committed the worst war crimes. And so the paramilitaries they had in Bosnia, and they also had them in Kosovo, and that's where the trouble started. And for my book, I arrived after the Serbian, the Yugoslav army kind of retreated back to the administrative line, and so they were outside the Kosovo province. I hope people don't read that book and say it's pro-Serbian, because when I arrived there, it was the Albanians who were committing the crimes against the Serbians. That's what this book is actually about. The villain in this is a former Kosovo Liberation Army guy who won't let the war end. He can't let it go. He wants vengeance. So horrific war crimes committed before I arrived. But when I arrived, it was the Albanians had come back. A lot of them were refugees, and they had come back, and they were getting even, is what was happening when I was there. So I had no hatred for, like, I was a perfect UN person because I really didn't have a dog in that fight. I didn't feel like, oh, I got to support the Albanians, or oh, I got to support the Serbians, or whatever, for whatever reason. I just kind of related the story as I saw it. So some readers might find it a little bit tilted towards, because the Serbs are mostly the victims in this one, but
Yeah.
my partners, I'm training ethnic Albanian former KLA guys. So there were guys who were in the KLA, who became police officers. They had no police force. And so I'm a field training officer, and one of the guys, and this is in the book, one of the guys I'm training was a Kosovo Liberation Army war hero. And I was his field training officer. He's a great guy, man. I had a nice time with him, and we had some discussions about the war. He's telling me, yeah, he was showing me places where they were fighting. He's like, yeah, I lost some of my friends in battle in this village over here. And it was a really interesting time. And some of the other language assistants and some of the police officers, they were in the Yugoslav army. And we're all working in one police station. And so it's a really kind of fascinating setup for going in and doing patrol with like I said, there's 60 other countries, but each station wouldn't have 60 different countries there. Usually they send us out in twos. So I was one of two Americans. Eventually, I think we were three Americans, but we had two from Egypt, two from Russia, two from Oman, two from Pakistan. We had like four or five from wasn't Austria we had, and so I mean they could all over the globe. We had two guys from Fiji. I kid you not. We had two officers from Fiji.
I didn't know that Fiji even had very many people there to choose from. Like two people probably put them short on a few things.
Yeah, they their equipment was horrible. I felt bad for them. They had these rusty revolvers, and I remember guys trying to help them get them cleaned up and get them so they functioned. And one of the guys, we had a couple guys from Africa that didn't have the real winter gear, and some of the guys pitched in money to help get them some winter clothes because it gets brutally cold there in Kosovo. But they were real gentlemen, I should say. My colleagues there, they were really nice guys, and most of them came from the officer corps. They were when I walked in the first day, they had all kinds of stars and bars and ornament jewelry on their shoulder. So they're all fairly high ranking at home. And I guess you had to be high ranking maybe because let's say I was making 3 times the amount of money coming to the mission as an American, but some of them were making 10 or 15 times the amount of money from home. So that's why maybe all the high ranking people were jumping on the mission and going there.
Man, that's awesome. I listened to some of these stories before we recorded some stories from Kosovo, and just hearing the camaraderie between the fellas that were there from all different countries, like UN peacekeeping kind of thing, and just hearing some of the stories from the guys that were there, it reminded me a lot of hearing combat soldiers talk about their time in Iraq, because there was a lot of different countries there involved in that. Was there a general feeling of brotherhood across all nations there that were involved?
Yeah, I would say we all got along pretty well. I was blessed, let's say, or lucky to be a native English speaker because the language for the UN is English.
Right.
And so I made a lot of friends because I could write a report in 5 minutes. In New York City, we scratch out reports like really fast. And you have some people there, like my friend, I had a good friend, he's from Jordan, and he could speak English well, but he learned English from the movies and television. And if he had to write a police report, he was really intimidated by that. And I always said, yeah, give me that. Tell me what happened. And then I'd write it. He would sign his name to it. So the Americans had that advantage. But it created good fun and even some laughs. When I think back, they usually find the person in the station who speaks the worst English and they put them on the radio. And so, of course, they put my friend from Jordan on the radio. And he would say, first off, a lot of them were smokers. So, and in Kosovo, they smoked everywhere. They smoked inside, they smoked outside, they smoked everywhere. So you hear them go, you hear an exhale, and he'd say, Tango Echo 7, Oh, my brother, you cannot imagine. You cannot imagine what they did. And he'd give us the job and say, you go to this location and you kick them when you get there. So he's saying on the radio, oh, no, don't say anything like that on the radio, man, but it was funny with the different accents and the different cultures. The contingents did have parties, and I went to several different contingent parties. And so there was all kinds of interesting dynamics. The Finnish battalion, so the Finns, they were the military unit that controlled the area that I was in. And so the Finns, very, very nice guys. They have very strange accent. I don't know if you ever heard anybody speak Finnish.
Yeah. Recently they joined NATO. So I've had the privilege of listening to some Finnish soldiers and some people from Finland, but mainly like here last week it was the countries were meeting in Davos, and the I can't remember who it was, but he came out and he was speaking, and I was like, man, that's a really unique, awesome sounding accent.
Yeah, it's something. It's completely indecipherable for us. I mean, it's a scola cockpit.
It's exactly what it sounds like.
So, but they all spoke English, and they were very nice to us. They used to let us use their cafeteria, so we would eat with the Finnish mess hall. At the Finnish mess hall, they invited us. I actually have it in the chapter I mentioned having eating reindeer with the Finns at Christmas time. So they flew in reindeer. It's an actual joke that I told in Kosovo. They said, the Finns, they're bringing in meat, this reindeer meat from Finland, and they're flying it in. And I'm like, oh, can't the reindeer fly themselves in? Like joking around with them. But we ate reindeer, and they had their traditional food, which was delicious. They're very much into like salmon dishes and soup. And so I got exposed somewhat to the Finnish culture by just serving in Lipion. In the book, the name of the town is Fizpone. And the reason I did that, I was going to make the book a cautionary tale against tribalism. Because that's what all I saw over there was tribalism. You had this tribe against that tribe. And it was interesting talking to even Macedonians, Serbs, Montenegrins. Like when you talk with them and ask them about Yugoslavia, it's funny. They're like, oh, the Croatians, they're the most nationalistic, the Croatians. And I wasn't dealing with the Croatians there, but they're much worse. I thought the Serbians were pretty nationalistic. And Albanians are more of I wouldn't say nationalistic. They're more of a clan. They're very clannish, but they all have this going, and that sometimes can be used to fuel the conflicts there. And so I wanted to make this cautionary tale, and I named the town Fiz, which is Albanian for tribe, and Plene, which is Serbian for tribe. So essentially it's tribe in the two different languages. But the real name of the town was Lipion. It was just south of Pristina.
So we were talking shortly off air. You said you're in Europe. Where at in Europe are you? Whereabouts?
Right now I'm in Skopje, North Macedonia.
So is it warm there? Because like I tell you what, it's like -7 here today. I'm in Missouri, United States, and we're dealing with a heavy winter storm that's blowing through. Is it cold there right now?
Yeah, it's pretty cold, but no, not like what you're having there. But yeah, actually, the temperatures here are pretty close to New York. They have very hot summers and they have very cold winters. So we have 4 seasons here. I'm 2 hours south from the Greek border. The weather changes when you drive south. It changes drastically. Like as soon as you cross into Greece, the weather gets nice. I mean,
Oh man.
yeah, it's not just a regular borderline. It's definitely a change in the bands of weather. I think it's probably around 50 degrees and sunny down near Thessaloniki, but Thessaloniki's not even a 3 hour drive from Skopje. It's pretty close.
Yeah, it's kind of like Europe over there. It's kind of like here in the United States, we travel from state to state, and over there they travel from country to country. But
Right.
it's about the same land mass wise. It's the difference between United States and Europe would have to be, in my opinion. And now I've never been outside the United States, though I would love to. In my opinion, the difference would be instead of traveling state to state, you travel from country to country. Is that what it's like over there?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Albania, and the northern part, they don't really have as many palm trees as when you go south in Albania. So just a 2 hour trip along the Adriatic, and banana trees can grow, and just the different things that can grow changes in shorter distance. So I know if you're in New York and you want to get good weather, you have to go almost entirely through the Mid Atlantic before the weather changes, but drastically, I should say. But here, you get weather changes a little quicker, when you're on a good highway heading south. So, but yeah, it's I've been over here a long time in different countries here, and really love the experience. I've come to love the Balkans.
So are you married?
Yes,
You got kids?
yeah, I got kids. Yeah,
Is you're all a whole family over there with you, or?
yeah. My kids, they speak Serbian and Macedonian, and they do it in front of me to keep me out of the conversation because I never really put the time in to learn. I
That's
uh,
awesome.
I speak reasonably good Spanish. I'm fully conversational in Spanish. I actually worked in Mexico as a police advisor, and I didn't have a language assistant there, so I had to really take my Spanish game up a notch. But yeah, I don't. There's a lot of Americans who say they speak Spanish, and they really don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I speak Spanish, but I wouldn't. I'm hesitant to call myself fluent. Like, if the State Department would probably think I'm a 2-2, which means that you can hold conversations, you can read a newspaper, you can do a lot of things, but we're not going to allow you to do business in
Right.
Spanish because it's not
Right.
quite there. But I would love to get 3-3 in Spanish and go someplace warm. We'll see.
Well, we were talking, you had mentioned that that some people that you had worked with in Kosovo had learned English from movies and stuff. And
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
reminds me of there's a creator out of Ukraine. I can't remember his name right now, but he is very open about how he learned English, and he learned English from like Netflix, watching TV shows like Friends and stuff. And I couldn't even imagine learning a second language, especially one as hard as English, right? I could not imagine learning English or learning a second language just from movies and no instruction
It's
or
unbelievable, but they do it. I've seen
it,
it. The younger you are, the easier.
right.
So my kids, they speak Macedonian like Macedonians, but they also speak English like American. They don't have any accent. They don't have my New York accent, which, okay, maybe that's a plus for them. They have this kind of neutral American accent. And I was in Florida, and my daughter's in the pool and she's swimming, and I'm talking with her, and there was a lady there, a retired lady. She's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, I'm from Macedonia." And she says, "Oh, Ohio. There is a Macedonia in Ohio." And she was a little kid at the time. She's like, "No, not in Ohio." And then right at that moment, my wife comes and started speaking Macedonian to her. And then she broke into Macedonia, and the woman was really shocked. She's like, "Wow, this girl who just sounded like an American kid is speaking an entirely different language." And probably she didn't even know it. She just learned that at home. She's speaking that with her
Right.
mother and
Yes.
speaking English with me, so it's easier. But
That's what I noticed listening to this creator from Ukraine. He's actually like a war blogger, and he's talking about the conflict in Ukraine. And when he's speaking, you can't really, his English is actually pretty good, but most of the time it's I've once you start learning that way, you can actually listen, or you notice yourself understanding what people are saying without I mean it's not a cognitive switch. Like now after watching so many what was the conflict really started off and it really kicked off in the invasion in 2022. So a couple years of Russian and Ukrainian. Sometimes I understand what they're saying, though I don't speak or understand Russian or Ukrainian. And so it's fascinating to me. Linguistics in itself is fascinating to me. Like you were mentioning that you're from New York, you have that New York accent, and I find it fascinating because so Donald Trump is from New York as well. And not only does he have that accent, but he also weaves in his conversations. And I was just talking to a psychologist from New York not too long ago, and she did the same thing. And she's weaving in and out, and I'm like, that's very interesting. Linguistics is very interesting. Do you remember how they caught Ted Kaczynski through linguistics? And I
Yeah,
find that whole subject fascinating.
yeah. There's just a quick story. A friend of mine is a volunteer fireman on Long Island, and they had a situation where there was some arson cases, and it was the same. They believed that the arsonist was the one calling 911, and so he had this kind like this. All right, I have a Long Island accent. Long Island accents can get really heavy, even heavier than mine, believe it or not. And he said, "Yeah, there's a fire at this location," and he's using this like really heavy accent. And at the end of the call, he always ended it with "Thank you." That's the way he said "Thank you." And so a lot of these arson cases, it is volunteer firemen. You know, it does happen on it. I don't want to besmirch these people are volunteering for their community. It's unfortunate that you get a small, tiny percentage of them who get a little carried away and want to make the action happen. But the chief was calling up people to let them know about a softball game that was going to be postponed or something. And one of the guys ended the conversation. Okay, chief, thank you. And it just rung in his head. And then they got their suspect, and it turns out it was him. But yeah, sometimes that can work against you if it's a little too unique.
Yeah, so Minnesota's not far from us. Again, I'm in Missouri, northwest corner of Missouri. Minnesota's not that far from us, and just like 3 hours north of us, they sound completely different than we do, and it's fascinating to me. It's endless hours of entertainment speaking to people all over the
Yeah,
world and their different accents. I love it. There's it just what else I love? You were speaking about it as well. Is food from all over the place.
yeah,
Food and culture it goes hand in hand. So when I travel, and again, I've never left the United States, even though I want to. Um, I when I travel around the United States, we have kind of like a rule when we travel. We don't eat things that we can get at home when we're on the road, when we're
that's true.
traveling. And
Yeah,
the reason for that is because, like, man, there's a McDonald's right down the street. There's a few chain restaurants down the street, right? We can get that anywhere. But when I go to places, when I travel, I want to eat what the locals are eating. I want to try what they like and get a little bit of their culture.
yeah,
Is that do you really enjoy that part of traveling around Europe and stuff?
absolutely, absolutely. Eastern Europe, the food is fantastic. It's really
Oh, I,
great,
I bet.
really great, and it's natural. I mean, that's the only I I do run into uh, former Yugoslavs who speak English, and they want to ask me what's better, America or here? And part of me wants to say, are you kidding me? What's better? I mean, if we gave everybody here a visa and an airplane ticket, and gave everyone in America a visa and an airplane ticket, your country would empty out, and no one would leave America. Maybe a handful would leave America, but I don't say that to them. I don't want to insult them. I concede the one thing that I do believe is better in Eastern Europe, and that is the food. Bread
Yes.
is made and it's stale the next day. Bread is not meant to be on the shelf for 3 months and still be
Yes.
soft and spongy. and fresh
Mike,
looking good fish.
you're preaching to the choir here,
It's
Mike.
all
We
chemicals.
bake our own bread here.
It's oh,
He,
beautiful. It's all chemicals.
yes,
It's nonsense. And the meat is too red and too perfect. And I mean, I was living in Albania, and they would. This is how they advertised the butcher. The calf would be roped up outside the butcher shop at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and that
that's awesome.
you go at 2 in the afternoon, and there's your veal.
Now
So like
that's fresh, right?
I'm not worried about refrigeration even. I mean, the animal was alive a few hours ago, and now you go and pick up the meat. But Albania, for me, the food was the best because the fish was fresh caught.
Oh yeah.
And I was even in a restaurant in Vlora, which is the town where the fishing boats would come in. And at the restaurant, they came out with a tray of fish, and a couple of them were still moving. Like they would go down there at 6 o'clock in the morning and take the fish. Most of them would get exported to Greece and to Italy, and they were pretty expensive. But these are locals, and so the local restaurant would get really fresh fish. And so, yeah, Macedonia, the food is very fresh. It's not heavily processed, although it's getting more and more processed. They are
Yeah.
when everybody else is moving away from that, maybe they're moving a little bit towards
Well,
processed food.
I think here in the United States we're starting to learn, right? I think that the younger folks are starting to get wise to what really happened, and so a mass production of food is basically, and we have so much excess here, and that's, I think that's what really caused all the preservatives to be in our food, was mass production of food and having to ship it from let's say Florida to um, England for the time it takes to get there. You gotta have the food at least last that long, and then how long is it going to be on the shelves when it gets there, and this, that, and the other thing. So a mass production of food that a little city factory is trying to feed the entire world. And I think we need to regionalize that down a little bit and shorten supply chains. But the problem with that is things don't grow everywhere. Like we have a lot of wheat and grain here in Northwest Missouri and eastern Kansas. And that stuff, I mean, it grows regional here. And so, but you don't always get that like up north. I mean, New York and places like that would probably have it because of the rural food production there, uh, the agricultural. I can't find the word that I'm looking
It's
for,
not
but
factory. It's not that commercially produced. They're
yeah,
still family
yeah,
farms. Um,
exactly.
Recently, it was the first time I heard about issues with food. I forget which country, maybe Croatia or Slovenia, stopped some food from going in, and it was tested and at a high level of pesticide. And they normally don't use high levels of pesticides, but there's also the profit margin. When you
Yeah,
use pesticides, you get yields that are 3 times the amount than if you're not using those pesticides. And
right.
it just financially, maybe here they didn't have those pesticides in the past. Now they have access to them. They might find it irresistible, financially for the farmers to do stuff like that. But
Right. And nowadays, like, we test things before we put it on the market, whereas back then, we weren't necessarily
yeah, no, it's
concerned about that.
a lot of chemicals in the food, and that's, I think it's directly connected to the unhealthiness and the obesity and all that.
Yes.
So that's,
Yes.
I'm acutely aware of that, and I'm glad that it's just a lot less here. I shouldn't say it's not perfect, but we have a lot less, and that's really the main thing. I would say about Yugoslavia, also former Yugoslavia, all these countries here. They also have very low crime rates. I mean, crime is not an issue. I worked as a police advisor, and I was I was at a conference, and I was asked about different techniques and things that we do in New York, and I mean, my answer was Belgrade, Skopje, Pristina, uh, you name the city, Zagreb. They're all safer than New York. They're all much safer than New York. So even though they don't have, all the type of innovation and different systems and using these crime strategies, these proven crime strategies, and they're very safe cities.
That's
And so
awesome.
maybe they don't need all the stuff that we have. Maybe the crime goes up, but yeah, it's nice that you can walk around at night in most of the big cities over here. You can walk around at night. A woman can walk alone without, I mean, I wouldn't go too crazy, into walking in some, lonely part of an industrial section, but generally speaking, anywhere in the center, a woman is safe walking around.
Right, right. So being where
Yeah.
you are, so have you have you visited Russia at all?
No, yeah, I would love to go, but yeah,
Me
I think that's
too.
just going to be impossible because
Yeah,
I worked at U.S. embassies, and who knows if they have a file on me somewhere.
yeah.
Uh, I've never done anything in the intelligence world, but they don't know that. They
Right.
it's like I don't want
With
to end
your
up in jail.
credentials right now, they probably wouldn't even let you in.
Yeah, yeah. I really wanted to see St. Petersburg more so than Moscow. It's just a
Oh
fascinating
yeah.
country. But
Yes.
in the book, I had, and this is a true story. I had a Russian psychiatrist as my patrol partner. So I'm now doing patrol in Kosovo with a Russian police officer, and I was working with him for over a week, and then I don't know why we didn't get in the conversation, but I said, hey, where did you do patrol? Where did you work? And he said, I didn't really do patrol. I said, what do you mean? You're a police officer? He said, well, I'm a police psychiatrist. So he did the interview for people wanting to join the police, and he also treated officers who were suffering from different maybe PTSD or whatever types of things that officers come for help for. And he said I had training before I came here, and so there were he was actually quite good. He was a very smart guy, obviously. I mean, the guy's a psychiatrist, so
Yeah.
they probably gave him a book on how to do policing, and he read it. So it's better than nothing. But yeah, some of these other countries, I know I don't want to start naming countries. I don't want people to send hate mail to you or to me or whatever. Certain
Yeah, they could
countries.
send all the hate mail they want to me. I don't care about that. So I love conversations, and
Oh, okay.
even more than the messages and the corrections and all that. That stuff's gonna happen. But I'm here for the conversation. I love talking to people. I love meeting people.
Oh, yeah.
And when you reached out to me, it was like, man, that's fascinating. I got to talk to this guy,
I'm glad. I'm
and
glad you took my inquiry. But
yeah,
yeah, I'll just say this: there were some colleagues who were in the army, and then they joined the police, and they just gave them a police uniform and said,
yes,
"Go."
yes,
So
yes. And I think that happens here a lot too, actually.
I,
As
you
long as
know,
as long
there's
as you can,
thousands of police departments, and the training isn't standardized. But I think because the U.S. because we have a lot of liability,
yes,
I think you'd be hard pressed to find an officer, a police officer, let's say, not some. There's constables, there's all kinds of other law enforcement people, but generally, I think most municipalities would be afraid to get sued to
yes,
bankruptcy, having somebody out there
absolutely.
who didn't do like at least 5 months in an academy or something. So,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah,
think that the academy is actually, it's like that's a requirement everywhere here in the United States. But
yeah, due to
what
civil
kind of
liability.
training you're getting at
That
that?
yeah, that could be suspect in some places. I'm not gonna. I'm a police apologist, but I can't defend everything.
I'm actually gone the other direction. So before, in my 20s, I'm not anti-police by any means, but I had a problem with authority when I was younger.
Sure.
And when you got a problem with authority, so cops and criminals have psychologically, they're kind of the same. They just have two different jobs. It's one's to chase, one's to run. So um I've never been anti-police, but I used to be like more. I hated authority. Like, you could tell other people what to do, just leave me alone, kind of thing. And so I've actually went the other way, and I'm pro police, and I'm um, pro justice. I could say, but I'm more or less I'm anti bullshit, I guess, is how I would say it. I've gotten older, and the older I get, the more I understand the need for these things to be in place, and the more I understand why things are the way they are. And it just like the whole, have you been paying attention to stuff here in the United States recently?
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got the ICE stuff going on,
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
border patrol. I'm actually on their side, and it's very hard to like. A lot of people won't say that in public, but I'm actually on their side because I believe in their mission, and I know how hard and difficult it is. Now, are there, there's probably several people that don't need to be there because of their temperament, or they should seek out a different job, but it is what it is. And we should support not just not just our citizens, but we should support the law enforcement as well, because it's an ecosystem and we can't have one without the other.
yeah. They're in a tough spot. I don't know how. I wish there was an off ramp from that
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't know what it is, because if you back down, it's not good. But if you keep ramping it up, it's not good. So I wish they could have, let's say, done their job. They can do their job very effectively, but I think the problem came from the administration, where they say, "Hey, we're coming. We're gonna do this, and they're gonna do that," and that started it for ICE, and then the
Yeah.
protesters got out of hand. I thought so. So
And then, well, to
it
get
just
back to your
ramps up.
like,
I don't know how to de-escalate that, but I really would love to see that de-escalated, because they do need to take the worst of the worst off the street.
yes,
They really do. But I understand where the protesters, they feel it's heavy-handed. That they're
yes, yes,
wearing all the gear, and I see them pepper spraying all the people, and because as a police apologist, I hate to see like police in a situation where they look like the villains, whether they're the
yes,
villains or not. I
yes.
don't kind of the judge from videotape also. I see a videotape,
Well, two
you
things
don't
can
know
be
what went
true.
on before, or what happened.
Two things can be true at the same time, right? Yeah. Both people in the situation that we're alluding to are, both people in the situation can be wrong, and the the protesters on one side, you know, they're a little too agitated, but we have law enforcement on the other on this side. And if we could just come together and have conversations, I think social media has really exacerbated a lot of this. But to get back to your book, you were talking about tribalism, and you wanted to highlight that in your book, the
Yeah,
tribalism that is prevalent over there. I
yeah,
think that's really what's happening right now. It's not that the protesters are so anti-ICE that they want them completely gone. And it's not that ICE is so anti people that they want to arrest everybody, but it's the fact that we're so tribal that one side sees the other as the enemy, and it's not. We're
yeah,
not the enemy. We're all people here. We're just trying to get
absolutely.
along the best that we can. And if we had leaders that could point that out, if we had leaders that could come out and say, hey, we know that you don't like this, so let's come together and come up with a solution, or come up with a compromise. That's a dirty little word in American politics today, is compromise. And it shouldn't be. It
Yeah,
absolutely shouldn't be. So I wanted to,
I
like,
agree.
when you said you deal with a lot of tribalism, and you wanted to highlight that in your book, and you see a lot of it there, I'm like, yeah, I think that's essentially what's happening here in the United States. Is we're broken up by factions.
I think I agree. There's I have so I really wanted this book to have kind of I don't know if you call them subliminal messages, but I really wanted to deliver an anti-tribal message. I don't think I successfully did that, but I highlighted, or just brought a little focus attention on rivalries because we had Indian police officers and Pakistani police officers, and they have their
Oh,
little
yeah.
fiction, even though they all, interesting enough, when Indians and Pakistanis talk to each other, it's in English. It's rarely in Hindi, which is
Really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, because I mean, Great Britain had that whole region, and India has like, I don't know, they have over 20 languages, and Hindi is like now again.
I have heard that most Indians know English. I
Yeah,
have heard
they
that.
do,
Yeah.
and it goes back to the when it was a British colony, and Pakistan, I believe, was part of that colony where they separated from India. So they speak English, and the Finnish battalion army soldiers would walk on patrol, and they broke up the region. The British had Pristina, so that was the British military, and then the Americans had Jalan, which was down south, and that's where when I was there, it was the big red one. But they roll in different regiments, come in and take over, and I was with the Finnish battalion. I saw them doing joint patrol with the Norwegian, and they were speaking English. And I said to one of the Finns, and this is in the book also, I said, hey, you guys speak English to each other? And he kind of gave me like this whole thing where, yeah, we don't have this Viking Norse language, that we share, because a lot of them speak Swedish, but apparently Sweden was kind of a bad guy to the other Scandinavian countries. And even though some of them will speak Swedish, they meet the Swedes, they're going to speak English with them because the Swedish speak English also. So I highlighted some of that, and I myself, I'm from Irish Catholic origins. I went to Catholic school. My grandmother and grandfather from Galway and Mayo, so I'm Irish Catholic. New York City cop, like there's tens of thousands of us probably. The reason the Irish became cops was because when they got off the boat, they spoke English, so they went right into the police force. I don't know
I
if a lot
didn't
of
know
people
that
know that.
either.
Yeah, so
That's fascinating.
the Italians would get off the boat, they would go to construction because you don't have to. And the Italians made out better with construction than the Irish did with the police. Being a civil servant,
Absolutely.
you're never going to get rich. But the Germans, same thing. So the immigration in New York, Irish went into these civil service positions because they were native English speakers. And so I come from that Irish Catholic. I shouldn't say Irish Catholic because I had some Irish friends of Irish descent, let's say, who are Protestant. It's not all Irish Catholic, but largely. And I get to Kosovo, and there's 6 Northern Irish Royal Ulster Constabulary police officers, and they're from Belfast, and they're coming from the Troubles. And my grandfather was an IRA guy. He was like he was. I think it's the reason he came to America. I think the rumor was that he
See,
was
the
wounded.
psychology's not that different, Mike. It's really not.
No,
It's so
yeah,
law
I thought
enforcement and criminals are very similar.
I ended up drinking with these guys, and I had a wonderful time with them. They were really terrific. One of the guys was kind of bigoted. I mentioned in the book, he was like really anti-Catholic, whatever. And but the other guys were actually kind of embarrassed by that. They were like, we're kind of sick of this whole thing. I mean, they were proud to be Unionist and Protestant and all that. I mean, I'm not saying, but they were like a little embarrassed by the whole culture of mixing it up by sectarianism. So I do like a little bit with the sectarianism because I met he was a Catholic Royal Ulster Constabulary guy, and I used to go to mass with him. And I'm not particularly religious, but there's nothing to do over there. Like I was thinking, you know what? Am I going to smoke a joint at some point, or maybe I'll just go to church or something? I wasn't a big pot smoker. I dabbled in that in college, but I'm so bored out of my mind because we had no electricity. So you're sitting around, and if you're not working, you have no electricity, and you
Yeah.
like candlelight, and this would make you crazy. So I ended up going to church with a Northern Irish Royal Ulster Constabulary guy, but a Catholic guy. It was interesting getting kind of his take on things because he would be more likely to be killed by the IRA than then a Protestant would harm him.
Right.
They would consider him a traitor, and he had served in the British military as well, and he's this really excellent guy. And I was asking him, hey, you're all Irish. You have the same skin color. You all wear SPF number 50 in the summertime. You don't know how to end a story. You just keep talking, and you guys have the same culture. Like, really, do you have to be at each other's throats, the way that you are? And I don't know that I came up with a good answer. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
that I didn't come up with kind of hey, this is the solution. If I was going to be real profound, like some philosopher, who was the guy who said you have to cultivate your own garden? Voltaire. I think he ends the
Yeah.
book. You need to cultivate your own garden. I wish I could have come up with something like, hey, this is how we need to tamp down on the tribalism, and I didn't really come up with a like I said, with something clever or something for people to think about it. But I did kind of shed a little light on some of the conflicts within, even within the police and with the other people. And it's kind of, it's everywhere. And it's really sad what happened to Yugoslavia. It was, it just, there's so many reasons it deteriorated. Unfortunately, they like to blame America, and I'm like, America, a lot of bad stuff that happened around the world, or of a hand in that than the U.S. The U.S. kind of came in at the last gig, and so I without getting into any conspiracy theories, I don't know if we did that all over the world. There's probably other places where, yeah, maybe we did have a hand in ending some government. But Yugoslavia, they did it to themselves. Well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a fascinating subject in itself to get into is um foreign influence by country, not just the United States, but all over the world, really. Foreign influence is man, it is fascinating because, like, so on a national scale, here in the United States, we don't think of things like that. But when you travel outside of the United States, those countries do. They think about those things because they have a longer history than we do, I think. And it's happened to them more and more and more over, a set period of time than the United States has only been here for 250 years. So it's one of those things that I think has been happening for a very, very long time, foreign influence and governments and that kind of stuff. But so just a couple more questions, and we'll let you get out of here. But Mike, this has been a great conversation. So I think one of the things that might help with tribalism, especially in Europe, but also here in the United States, is and I talk about this all the time, is just talking to each other. Conversations like this one. Mike, you and I don't have to agree on everything. We actually don't have to agree on anything, really. Just a conversation. You're a human being, I'm a human being. And when we acknowledge that, it is pretty hard to it's pretty hard to be hateful with each other. It's if you said something that really pissed me off right now, I wouldn't say, oh, I've got to end this podcast right now. I wouldn't do that because that's not who I am. But I think open and honest dialogue between human beings, no matter what side we're on, I think that's very important. And just reminding everybody about humanity, and we're all humans. Did you try to convey that in your book as well? That dialogue and talking to each other is basically one of the best things that we could do to kind of mitigate the issues that tribalism causes.
I think what I try to point out is that being tribal and having hatred is tragic. Is what I was pointing out, is that it leads to murder, it leads to tragedy. There was the antagonist in the book. he had lost a family member. Now he's a fictional antagonist. This is not a real person, but it's based on a composite of several people. And I'd rather not say who's the composite, but it's a composite of several people who were involved in the Kosovo Liberation Army, and um, they suffered, you know, and essentially when I arrived, he's doing payback, you know, and so you can have that message about vengeance. Um, there's actually a tradition from the laws of Lek and Kunan, which is old Albanian. It's not really folklore. It's like people still live by that, where they have blood feuds and things like that. I touched on it a little bit, but the book is about payback and how tragic that can be, and it's quite sad that people uh, here it's kind of interesting because it's so old. It's like 500 years old. Of you know, they talk about this stuff like it was yesterday too. You know,
Yeah.
that's the other dangerous thing. It's like, well, I'll tell you one thing. I came when I finished in Yugoslavia. I came out more. I was never like a fan of communism. I mean, I went to school, and you know, oh, communism. It's not good system. You know, it's state enforced atheism. You don't have ownership. It stifles innovation. Like there's all these reasons. And capitalism is not a great system either. You know, it's unfair. There's big winners and there's people who have nothing. Capitalism has its own problems, but I kind of have the view that I think capitalism is the worst system except for all the others. I think there's that saying, capitalism is the worst except for all the other ones you're proposing. But when I came out of Yugoslavia, I had a bad taste in my mouth about, and Yugoslavia wasn't that communist. They were kind of socialist light, really. They weren't nearly as communist as Enver Hoxha's Albania or the Soviet Union. But I didn't like the way that they felt that the state needed to do everything. People didn't really help their neighbors the way they should. They didn't look out for each other. There's no charities in Eastern Europe really to speak of. All the charities come from the West. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no. I shouldn't say there's no. There's very few charitable groups. They feel the state is responsible for taking care of these things, and that was something that. Um, and the other thing, when I came out of Yugoslavia, I had a newfound respect for Martin Luther King. When I was a kid, I remember they were trying to make Martin Luther King a national holiday, his birthday, a national holiday, and Arizona turned it down. And this was brought up. It was in a stand-up comedy. Dave Chappelle mentioned it during his stand-up comedy, and I remember that. And I remember my thought back then was kind of libertarian. I'm like, hey, if Arizona doesn't want to have Martin Luther King as a holiday, then so what? Let them not have it. And then after my experience in former Yugoslavia, in Kosovo, I think it was just amazing what Martin Luther King was able to do with just peacefully.
Yeah.
I real like I was always impressed with the "I Have a Dream" speech. Every American, you're a complete racist if you're not moved by the "I Have a Dream" speech, as far as I'm
Absolutely.
concerned. You know, but I was moved by that speech, but I didn't really understand how important he was. That he accomplished what he accomplished with the civil rights movement peacefully, because
Yes.
it could easily have gone the route of Yugoslavia. It easily could still be a mess. And yeah, look, racial relations aren't perfect in the U.S. now, but
I
I
think he
came out
said
with
it.
a
I think he said it best when he said, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind."
yeah, yeah. I came out of Kosovo saying, "Wow, Martin Luther King." Like I almost not that I needed to apologize to anybody. You know, I was like, "Man, I'm sorry. I thought that maybe his holiday shouldn't have." You know, in Arizona, I completely changed my mind. I think it's important for us to recognize him every year and just that he was able to lead that movement peacefully. And because man, you go to these other places and that's not how it goes. There's going to be always tension and always even
Bloodshed and heartache.
yeah, yeah.
So
So
you had mentioned actually, you had mentioned that Oh, about communism and capitalism. I tell you, like I'm really, really, really anti-communism,
Good,
really anti-communism.
good.
And the people, I find it really intriguing. You had mentioned that there's folks over there that believe the state should take care of whatever those things are. The state is responsible for so much. I see that happening here in the United States, that there's people that believe the state should be in control of health decisions, that the state should be in control of the amount of food that we get, that the state should be in control of a lot of things. I cannot think that way. I don't understand how people get into a situation where they would much rather the government give to them than take that accountability and responsibility for themselves and understand that they can provide for themselves. They can survive without governments. Um, okay, so let me back that up a little bit. We can survive without government intervention. We can survive without the government providing our health care, providing our food. And one thing that I always tell people is when you allow other people to control these things, not only do they control the food that you get, they also control if you get food at all. They can take all of that away if you let them have control. That's why you need autonomy and independence so you can provide for yourself. And the only person that's responsible for you is you. And that's ultimately the stand I take against communism is like nobody should have control of my shit but me, so that's the bottom line there. So Mike, where can people
Amen,
find
brother.
your book?
Amen. It's on Amazon, The Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo. Uh, the way I would describe it is that it's men's fiction. So there's an article in the New York Times recently that men don't really read much fiction. Men like biographies, they like true crime, they like war, nonfiction. So men are not big readers of fiction. But this is fiction with a lot of true stuff in it. So but it's also, it's kind of manly man. The feedback that I'm getting, I thought age would be a people, but it was really more divided by sex. The guys love it, and women are like, I think the homicides in there are pretty brutal, and some of the comedy is a little bit dark. It's a little bit
Yeah.
dude humor, you know. So if you're a Nelson DeMille, John Corey fan, I think you'd enjoy it. The protagonist is not a wisecracking detective. He's more the comedy comes from situational stuff, but also McNally's Risk, McNally's Gamble. That was a Palm Beach detective, but funny kind of situations. But I don't know if he really had much appeal to women either. But I would just say if you're a graduate of women's studies from Smith College, you might not like this book. So,
Right on, Mike. So
uh,
the name of the book is The Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo.
yeah,
And you can find that on Amazon. Do you also have a website set up, Mike?
yeah. It's I use the protagonist's name is JD Byrne. It's JD Byrne NYPD.com. So it's JB and then it's BYRNE NYPD.com. And I think there's a photo of me doing patrol in Lippy on there. And I really want to start answering questions from the readers and do more interaction like on the blog.
Hell
The
yeah.
book, the book was released last year, but I didn't really promote it because I'm still working overseas and I'm still doing police advising. And I don't think anything in that book would get me fired, but it could cause some people heart
Right. Why
problems
take that
here.
chance there? Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of I didn't really promote it. It's been out for almost a year, but it's almost like a new release because only my closest friends and family read it for the first 10 months or so. So, but I I, uh, I hope people get to take a look at it and enjoy it. Most of the events in there are based on actual events. A lot of the interaction with the colleagues. I just wasn't able to make it an autobiography or a memoir um, because I wanted to make it really interesting and make the story move, make it like a suspense thriller. And when you tell the truth completely, it gets a little boring.
So, one more question: do you have any more projects that you're working on, or any other books coming down the pipeline?
This book took a lot out of me. The one thing I share with the protagonist in the book is that we're both ADD. I was the kid in school, always looking out the window.
I have
Uh,
ADHD as well.
I don't have the HD. I just have the ADD. I have no attention span at all. And it got better as I got older. And my cousin explained it to me. She said, you know, she diagnosed me because she got her doctorate in like early child learning. And she said, oh, you have ADD. But the good news is you probably grew out of most of it because a lot of people with childhood ADD, they don't completely grow out of it, but they grow out of it. So the short answer to your question is writing that book was really difficult for me. I graduated college summa cum laude, but
I
but
love
I
that.
also got I got a master's degree also, so I am capable of reading stuff that I'm interested in. I got my master's degree in international terrorism, but I was very interested in those books, and so it was easy. My master's degree was a breeze because I'm reading books that I would probably read on my own, you know. So
Right.
but writing the book was a horror show for me, and I'm glad it's over. But if I do end up, who knows, in Venezuela or Cuba or maybe Ukraine. It could be Land of Broken Toys, Kiev, or Land of Broken Toys, Ukraine. That could be the next part. I would definitely write about the next place that I go if I go. I'm getting kind of old. I might retire. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a very long. Sorry for the long-winded answer to are you working on it?
No,
But short
man,
answer is
that's
no. But I
awesome.
will. I will if I go to someplace else. It won't be a mission like Kosovo. I won't be wearing a gun belt. I won't be involved with investigations or anything like that. It'll be more as an advisor or donating equipment and training. It'll be in that sort of role. But I could write a book if I got some new scenery.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. You know, like I just a short little the Ukraine idea, the land of broken toys, Ukraine. That is an awesome idea because like
We need the
I'm
war to end. They got to stop that war, and
yes,
then
yes.
nothing's going to happen.
I'm fascinated with the entire history of that conflict. It goes back to
Yeah.
like 2013, you know, and it's very even before then. Actually, it
Well,
goes all
yeah.
the
I
way
mean,
back to the 90s. But
yeah.
I'm very fascinated with what's going on since 2022 and forward. It's mind blowing, and the land of broken toys is actually a very fitting description of actually what's
Yeah.
going on over there with uh the foreign legion is what they call it, and it is a bunch of misfits mashed together, and they made a unit. So it's that's very awesome, and it's a very awesome idea that you just had as well. Mike, one more time, what is the name of your website one more time?
Uh, JB BYRN. So it's JBBYRNE NYPD, all lowercase, all one word.com.
Awesome. And we'll link that down in the description below. And the book is The Land of Broken Toys, Kosovo. You
Yeah.
can find that on Amazon. The author's name is Michael Kell Mahoney. And here he is.
Yeah. Thank
Michael,
you.
Mike, it's been a great conversation. And we're gonna cut you out of here, but man, I would love to talk to you again. I would love to do this again sometime. And as a matter of fact, I'm hang out with me for just a second, and we'll let these guys go, and I'll talk to
Ricky,
you
it's
off
been a
there.
pleasure, man. It's very easy to chat with you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Mike. We'll see you guys later.
Woo!